Richard Sorge, one of the greatest spies of all times, spymaster who helped Stalin defeat Hitler. Richard Sorge was a German journalist and Soviet military spy, active before and during World War II, working undercover as a German journalist in both Nazi Germany, China, and Japan. His code name was Ramjai. A number of famous people considered him one of the most accomplished spies. Sorge is most famous for his service in Japan in 1940 and 1941 when he provided information about Adolf Hitler's plan to attack the Soviet Union. In mid-September 1941, he informed the Soviets that Japan would not attack the Soviet Union in the near future. Various writers have speculated that this information allowed Stalin to transfer 18 divisions, 1,700 tanks, and over 1,500 aircraft from Siberia and the Far East to the Western Front against the Western Axis powers during the battle for Moscow. However, Soviet code breakers had broken the Japanese diplomatic codes, and Moscow already knew from signals intelligence that there would be no Japanese attack on the Soviet Union in 1941. As early as December 1940, he had informed Soviet Union that Hitler would invade the Soviet Union on a massive scale, but Stalin chose to ignore his warnings, calling his warnings as provocation. Finally, in June 1941, Germany did invade the Soviet Union during Operation Barbarossa, and this invasion shocked Stalin, who was mentally paralyzed for a week. He retreated into his dacha outside Moscow for about a week. Stalin had signed a non-aggression pact with Germany and was confident that Hitler would not violate it. In October 1941, Sorge was arrested in Japan for espionage. He was tortured, forced to confess, tried, and was hanged in November 1944. The Soviet Union realized his greatness very late, and in 1964, they posthumously awarded him the title of Hero of the Soviet Union. Richard Sorge was born in Baku, Russia on 4th October 1895. His father was a German engineer and his mother was Russian. Sorge was the youngest of 9 children. In 1898, the Sorge family moved back to Germany. On the outbreak of the First World War, Sorge joined the German army. He was a courageous soldier and was awarded the Iron Cross. In March 1916, Sorge was badly wounded when both legs were broken by shrapnel, causing a limp that lasted his whole life. Despite this, he was able to charm many women. His last and best love was a Japanese waitress who was extremely loyal to him, defending and worshipping him even after his death. While in hospital during World War I, he began a relationship with one of his nurses. Over the next few months, he met and was influenced by the woman's Marxist father. He then studied at Berlin University. Later, he recalled that he now decided not only to study but also to take part in the organized revolutionary movement. In 1919, Sorge was released from the army and he transferred his studies to the University of Kiel. He also joined the newly formed German Communist Party, KPD. After leaving university, he worked as a journalist, and in April 1925, he moved to the Soviet Union, where he started work for the Comintern Intelligence Division. In May 1933, the Soviet Union decided to get Sorge to organize a spy network in Japan. As cover, Sorge went to Nazi Germany, where he was able to get commissions from two newspapers. He also got support from the Nazi theoretical journal Geopolitik. Later, he was to get work from the famed Frankfurter Zeitung. Sorge arrived in Japan in September 1933. He was warned by his spymaster not to have contact with the underground Japanese Communist Party or with the Soviet embassy in Tokyo. His spy network in Japan included Max Clausen, Ozaki Hatsumi, and two other Comintern agents, Branko Bukalis, a journalist working for the French magazine Vous, and a Japanese journalist Miyagi Yotoku. Sorge soon developed good relations with several important figures working at the German embassy in Tokyo, including Eugen Ott and the German ambassador Herbert von Dirksen. Sorge even slept with the wife of the German ambassador. This enabled him to find out information about Germany's intentions towards the Soviet Union. Other spies in the network had access to senior politicians in Japan, including Prime Minister Konoe, and they were able to obtain good information about Japan's foreign policy. As a result of the information accumulated by the network, Sorge was able to give Joseph Stalin advance warning about the Anti-Comintern Pact of 1936, the German-Japanese Pact of 1940, and Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor. His greatest achievement was to inform the Soviet Union in December 1940 of the proposed Operation Barbarossa. Despite the efforts of Sorge, Joseph Stalin did not believe that the German army would attack at that time and did not take the necessary action. As Leonard Trepper, the head of Red Orchestra, later pointed out, the Generalissimo preferred to trust his political instinct rather than the secret reports piled up on his desk. Convinced that he had signed an eternal pact of friendship with Germany, he sucked on the pipe of peace. At the end of August 1941, Sorge was able to tell Joseph Stalin that Japan would not attack the Soviet Union that year. 2 months later, Sorge was arrested in Tokyo and was held in prison for 3 years. The Soviet Union refused to exchange Sorge for Japanese prisoners they held, and he was hung on 7th November 1944.